work experiences in their field while they're in school, and to help them secure good paying careers and jobs after they graduate, and certainly to help them transfer to our four-year partners across the street or across the state. It's a privilege to help them pursue their dreams for a great life and for themselves and for their families. Our mission as CNM is changing lives and building community, and our faculty and staff, our employer partners, our community partners live this vision every day. They help our students achieve this vision every time a student graduates and gets them a great job that benefits their community. So today I want to say we applaud President Biden and the governor for making community colleges and workforce training more easily accessible to all those in our state. Their leadership, along with our New Mexico legislature, helped expand New Mexico's Opportunity Scholarship. This program helped nearly 7,000 students enroll at CNM this fall. Now, the state's financial commitment fills a startling gap for so many of our students who struggle to make ends meet every day. This scholarship program will help many more of them stay in school, graduate, and go on to those life-changing careers. But now, I'd like to introduce the governor of our great state of New Mexico. As our college leaders here today know, she's a great supporter of community colleges and workforce training, and she's a supporter of education at all levels, from early childhood education all the way through graduate studies at our universities. We are truly grateful for her support of CNM and our students, and we appreciate her being with us today. So welcome.
What a nice warm welcome, and know that I feel the same way about you. And thank you, Madam President. She's amazing. This is a team sport, team effort, getting college and public education investments right. And I want to just sort of take us back to 2019. Brand new governor right here at Central New Mexico Community College in a room much like this one, with regents, community leaders, most importantly, students and their families, talking about what it would mean to make college free in New Mexico. And that is exactly what we announced right here. And in short order, that is exactly what we did. And now New Mexico is home to the most expansive free college program in the nation. And it is, by every measure, absolutely working. And I want to take a step back before I brag, along with everyone else, about what's going on across the state and what could happen if other states, and I believe you're going to hear there's a groundswell of support by President Biden and the federal administration to do exactly that, to partner to make sure that we are expanding these free college programs all across America. Because what we know is that education is the great equalizer, that with education comes opportunity, that in a state that for far too long has been so singularly focused on just lifting people out of generational poverty, which is still, right, we all aspire, every leader, every family, every effort is placed squarely there, because we know that until we get that right, addressing all the other issues that are important to society and important to families and important to our communities can't get addressed in the same way. We're clear about that right here. And I want to talk about that the investments that we got from the federal government allowed us to utilize our state resources in a very unique and powerful way. Now, when they were passing, right, ARPA, all of those reduction in costs for states acts, making sure that we were getting money for infrastructure, President Joe Biden and Vice President Harris made it clear to states that you could use any number of those investments to make sure that childcare and early childhood investments, right? So this strategy all the way to college, cradle to career, could take hold in your states. Now, I need to tell you that there are a lot of states in America that didn't do that. They didn't use any of those funds. And we had several chances to use those investments to do exactly that. Now, New Mexico, we didn't have to be told twice that that was money that would make a powerful difference. So today, We have the most expansive free childcare programs in America. We have universal early childhood or pre-K in New Mexico. We have the highest paid educators, K through 12, in the Southwest. All right? We lowered our vacancy rates in K through 12 with public educators by 34% in just this last 6 months. All right? We know this works. And how are we doing that? Let's go back to opportunity scholarships. That's how we're doing that. 9,000 of the more than 35,000 students are first-time students. So when folks ask me whether or not it's really working, whether or not we're encouraging families and first-time students to take hold of this aspect, I can tell you that the numbers are clear. Part-time, full-time, 2-year, 4-year, trades, every single discipline. And in fact, we've got opportunity scholarship folks here. You can give yourselves a round of applause. And we know that we're building not only a workforce, but we're building a new New Mexico that actually does exactly that. It builds, in fact, success and opportunity. Now, we couldn't have done that without the federal government support because we invested all that money into early childhood education. Now we're able to spend our state dollars on free college. But I want to highlight one more thing, and that is we can't saddle, which is part of the issue. You got to give people that lifeline to go to college. But you also have to recognize that when you give them the lifeline for the costs in higher education, they still have other responsibilities, right? They're raising their own families. They're paying for their cars, rent, houses, food. And in today's environment, that's increasingly challenging. Everything that we do that minimizes those issues or risks for families is 100 steps, not just one, in the right direction. Student loan forgiveness is a powerful tool in building, again, the kind of successful investments in people, in families, in states, in our collective future. That's exactly what we're doing, and we're celebrating that today. Now, President Biden, as the senator said, I could hear him back there with that rousing speech. Look, he didn't wait for Congress, he just led. Right? We're hungry for leaders who do that. That's 216,000 New Mexicans benefit as soon as we can get that door unlocked and through the courts. But New Mexico, like I like to brag, so let's see, I'll do it again. We didn't wait for that, did we? We provided those loan forgiveness programs for educators. We have 2 of them here today. We have Francisco and Sherry. Raise your hands. Are you here? I don't see them. They're somewhere. All right. Back there? All right. Oh, I see you. All right. Yay. All right. And we did it for folks who are doing, right, their part to build our healthcare services in the future. Noah and Levi, are you here? There they are back there. Yay. Thank you. All right. So if you want to drive folks right into the areas that also build a better New Mexico, then you have to provide those tools and resources. Today is an incredible day where New Mexico again shines, where the collective work, where we are leveraging every resource and recognizing who benefits most. New Mexico again is on the national map. And I, too, am incredibly proud to have the federal government recognizing our collective successes. I thank you. I thank President Hartzler and every single other person in our incredible delegation and elected leaders for making this possible for every single New Mexican today. Thank you.
Please welcome Central New Mexico Community College student Christy Sanchez.
Good afternoon and welcome. Thank you to Mr. President for the visit to Albuquerque, New Mexico, of where I was born and raised. Let me introduce myself. My name is Christy Sanchez, and I'm a proud CNM graduate. I recently graduated in December of 2021 with my associates in integrated studies, as well as an associate's in business administration, along with a few business certificates. Graduating from college with a degree has been a goal of mine for quite some time, especially after my regret of dropping out of college while attending the University of New Mexico in 2006. Soon after, I was employed in various jobs as a call center representative, an office assistant, a scheduler, and eventually landed an office management position of where I spent 8 years. After leaving this position, looking for a change, I quickly realized I was competing in a job market with individuals who not only had administrative experience, but also had the education and degree to accompany it. After years of excuses, I knew what I had to do, and I went back to school at the age of 35. With the help of state and local scholarships, federal Pell Grants, and student loans, I am now a college graduate. I am currently attending the University of New Mexico again, and will be graduating in spring of 2023 with my bachelor's in instructional technology and training. With the federal student loan debt relief, I will be able to continue my education for my master's in computer information systems and business analytics. This is something I never imagined would be financially possible for me. Now I can continue my educational journey and continue to show my children that the possibilities and opportunities are endless when you have a little extra help. I appreciate the visit from President Biden. I also appreciate the support and assistance that you and your administration have worked so hard to make possible. I, along with thousands of other New Mexicans, are entirely grateful. It fills me with great honor to be able to introduce President Biden today.
Thank you.
For this opportunity.
Thank you. Please have a seat. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Well, hello, New Mexico. Christy, thanks for the introduction. And, my wife's a full-time community college professor still, a teacher. And, matter of fact, she's teaching today. And, the average age of her students at Northern Virginia Community College, before that she taught at the Delaware Community College system, is 29 years of age. An awful lot of people going back, just knowing what they have to do and having a shot. And I want to thank you, Madam President, for hosting us here at your college. It's very gracious of you. And by the way, in case you haven't noticed, you probably have, if not the best, one of the best governors in the United States of America. We've worked, as they say, hand in glove, because we agree on so much. And Senator Ben Ray Lujan, so much of the progress we've made has been because of you, man. You're a great champion of the people of this state. And I want to say, Teresa, you're good. I tell you what, man, I could listen to you all day. Seriously, you're really, really, really good. And we're in your district, right? Or are we just? Okay, well, okay. Well, well, I want to tell you, the district we're in is pretty good too. And I can tell you you lack enthusiasm, Congresswoman, and it's really it's contagious. You know, New Mexico's lucky to have you, for real. And the thing I really, well, I shouldn't go on. But you know, there's enthusiasm. It's one thing to be for something, another thing to be a champion of it. And you know, Melanie, you're filling big shoes, taking over for Secretary Holland, who rode down from Washington with me. She never lets me come to New Mexico unless she can oversee it. And, but she's doing an incredible job as our Secretary of the Interior, the first Native American to ever serve in the cabinet. And Mayor Keller, thanks for the passport into town. Appreciate it very, very much. Look, folks, here in New Mexico, I want to thank the governor for making it possible for students across the state to go to college for free. And it's been, as I said, working hand in glove. I mean, there's a lot of ways that the federal government can be helpful. A lot of ways it can be a pain in the neck. And I try to get the pain in the neck out of the process. But, you know, we've lowered costs for families. It's no surprise New Mexico has seen one of the fastest, I think either one or two fastest growing increase in college enrollment in the state, in their state, and anywhere in the country. And the other one's New Hampshire. And so I want to understand why this is important. It's important because her leadership is an example for states all across the country. A lot of governors look and say, how'd you do that? You know, there's a lot of ways to do it. And, you know, we talked about them, and you did it. We're here today to talk about a key part of what we're doing nationwide. Student debt relief for millions of working and middle-class Americans is still recovering from the economic crisis caused by the pandemic. When I announced I was going to run for the presidency this time, I made it clear that I had three goals. The first and most important goal was to give middle-class families and working-class families a fighting chance. They've been on the short end of the stick for a long time, across the board. And that's why I said whether it's a tax policy or whether it's education policy, whatever it is, when the middle class we're going to build this economy from the middle out and the bottom up. That way the folks who are in the bottom part of the scale have a shot, the middle class gets to grow, and the wealthy still do very well. There's never been a time when the middle class, working class are doing well, the wealthy haven't done very well. And the way I think about it is the way my dad talked about it, and the way so many of you at home talk about it around the kitchen table. How much are the monthly bills? At the end of the month, do you have enough to pay for those bills? And what's left over, if anything? Is there enough for just a little bit of breathing room, as my dad used to say? Just a little bit of breathing room. Folks in urban and suburban, rural and tribal communities across the country, our student loan program is designed to give just a little more breathing room, a little breathing room. You know, my administration is working to provide up to $10,000 in student debt relief and up to $20,000 if the person seeking the relief received a Pell Grant. Because to receive a Pell Grant, your family income had to be very low. And so you have to make under $125,000 now to get that relief. And for borrowers out of school, nearly 90% of that relief is going to go to people who have incomes under $75,000. And you know, it's a plan for people who took out federal loans before July of this year. And a few weeks ago, we launched a simple online application where you can apply for this debt relief. Folks, just go to studentaid.gov. Fill out your name, your social security number, your date of birth, and contact information. No forms to upload, no special login to remember. It's available in English and Spanish. It's on desktop and mobile. It takes less than 5 minutes to do it. And if you need additional information, we'll follow up with you. This is a game changer for so many people. We're hearing from people all over the country about how easy it is to apply. Close to 26 million Americans have already applied, already given us the information to consider, so that they consider life-changing for their families and for them. My commitment when I ran for president was, as I said, the government would work to deliver for ordinary people. Simple application process keeps that commitment that way, just as I'm keeping my commitment to relieve student debt. And I want to state again who will benefit most: working people and middle-class folks. If you earn under $125,000 a year, you'll get up to $10,000 knocked off your student debt. If you earn under $125,000, you'll receive a Pell, and you received a Pell Grant, you get another $10,000. That's $20,000 in relief. Over 200,000 people in New Mexico have student loans, and the average borrower in New Mexico owes just over $34,000. And my plan is going to make a real difference in lowering the monthly cost for families as well. Folks, in total, more than 40 million Americans stand to benefit from this relief. And not a dime of it will go to the top 5% incomes, period. Across America, nearly every Pell Grant recipient comes from a family making under 60 grand. 2/3 come from families making under $30,000 a year. In New Mexico, more than 150,000 borrowers receive Pell Grants to go to college. That's 150,000 New Mexicans who will get $20,000 of their loan wiped off immediately, plain, simple, and it matters. Folks, as I pointed out, my wife has been a community college professor for years, and she's still teaching. Matter of fact, she's teaching today before she goes off this evening to campaign for us. She's traveled across the country meeting students from every walk of life. She's worked, some of the students she meets work 2 or 3 jobs while going to school, putting dinner on the table, helping their kids with homework, staying up late to do their own homework. As Jill says, they only ask for one thing in return, the chance to work hard and build a good life for themselves and their families. Many of those students, just like the students here, have had to borrow money to cover the cost of tuition. Roughly 40% of community college students nationwide receive a Pell Grant. I'm here today to tell you this student loan relief plan is for them as they recover from the economic crisis the pandemic inflicted and pay for their education. It's for folks like Christy, who you just heard from earlier. She went back to school to get a better job, take care of her family, so she could compete in today's economy. She relied on a student loan and a Pell Grant, and she did it while starting a family. Under our plan, she'll have nearly all of her loan forgiven, and it really matters. By the end of this week, the Department of Education will have approved applications of 16 million Americans and sent the necessary paperwork to student loan servicers. And the last step before the 16 million Americans can have their loan discharged. That's 16 million people who will be hearing from the Department of Education that they've been approved and who should be seeing relief in the coming days. But it's temporarily on hold. Why? Well, because Republican members of the Congress and Republican governors are doing everything they can, including taking us to court to deny the relief and even to their own constituents. And every lawyer tells me we've knocked 2 of them out of the way. There's only one thing left in the way, and that's going to happen. As soon as I announced my administration's plan for student debt, they started attacking it, even though I ran on it and everybody knew what I was going to do. Their outrage is just simply wrong, and I might add, I don't want to be too political here, but hypocritical. Fighting them in court, we're not letting them get away with it. I'm never going to apologize for helping working middle-class families as they recover from the economic crisis created by a pandemic. And I don't want... There's an awful lot of mainstream Republicans who they didn't vote for, but who I know support it, but they're a little apprehensive about their situation in their party. I don't want to hear from the MAGA Republican officials who sit in Congress and who had hundreds of thousands of dollars, in one case, over $1 million in pandemic relief loans forgiven. You know, all those folks who had businesses hurt by the pandemic? Well, we stepped in and we helped. Well, those loans are being forgiven. One of the congressmen received $2 million in forgiveness for a loan. Another one, who you know, she speaks a lot about this, Marjorie Taylor Greene and her husband, they got $180,000 in business loans forgiven. And she said, quote, "It's completely unfair for us to forgive student loans for working and middle-class Americans." Representative Vern Buchanan of Florida said our plan was reckless. He got forgiven $2,300,000. You can't make this stuff up. Republican governors wrote me a letter saying that the relief only helps the elite few. Y'all know you're elite? It's nice to know that. I knew you're elite. the elite few. Ted Cruz, a senator from Texas, said, you're a bunch of slackers. He says, it's for slackers who don't deserve relief. Who in God's name do these guys think they are? And folks, despite what Republican officials say, we can afford the student loan program. It's because of our historic deficit reduction. If we can hold for a second here, you know, when I came to office, I received, and I've got an enormous debt passed on to me, a $2 trillion tax cut, not a penny of which was paid for. And over 98% of it went to the top 1-2% of the public. And guess what? They raised the deficit. But guess what? Because of our historic, we had a very different plan, a very different reduction for all Republicans who voted against this. And they opposed the Inflation Reduction Act. Every single one voted against it, even though some I know were for it. Everyone voted for it, against it. And this year, under the leadership of the Democrats in Congress, and a little help from me, the deficit fell $1.4 trillion. Trillion. The largest one-year drop in the history of the United States of America. And we cut the federal deficit in half this year. We cut it in half. And this follows last year's historic drop in the deficit of $350 billion reduced last year. And we're going to further reduce the debt over the next decade by another $250 billion. And folks, that's not all. We're relieving student debt. We're also resuming student loan payments that are paused during the pandemic. But come January, folks whose debt isn't fully canceled because of the up to $20,000 they can receive are going to start paying their loans again. But guess what? That means billions of dollars a year are going to start coming back in the Treasury. But my administration has a planned, economically responsible course to ensure the smooth transition to repayment and unnecessary defaults. And so we're focused on going after the fraudsters, who call borrowers and pretend they're from the government to help them with their loans. If you get any questionable calls, any of them, please tell us by going to reportfraud.ftc.gov. Look, folks, my message to fraudsters looking to cheat the American people, don't. We're going to get you. We'll hold you responsible. Look, but here's the other thing. My administration is taking additional steps to make education a ticket to the middle class and folks can actually afford. For example, we're fixing what was called, and it wasn't very well administered, the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program. The idea was if you use your education to go to public service, you can over 10 years have it totally forgiven if you do. And if the program forgives students loans to encourage those students to go into public service, go into public school teachers, become police officers, work with local charities, members of the military, the National Guard. Since I've been in office, more than 250,000 teachers, 235,000 to be precise, nurses, police officers have been able to get over $14 billion in loan forgiveness because we're using them to encourage them to go into these works which we need. We're also proposing change to what's called income-driven repayment plans to make it simple and fair. No one with an undergraduate loan today or in the future, whether from a community college or a four-year college, will have to pay more than 5% of their discretionary income to repay their loan, no matter how long it takes. That's income after you pay for the necessities like housing, food, and the like. Only after that, 5% of disposable income. You're currently paying 10%. We're cutting that in half to 5%. And if you've still got loans left over after making your payments for 20 years, your debt will be completely wiped out. And I know that sounds strange for the students here, but a lot of people who are my generation a little bit later also have debt still. My son, Bo Biden, who was the Attorney General of the state of Delaware, passed away after a year in Iraq living next to a burn pit of glioblastoma. He went to 2 universities. He went to the University of Pennsylvania and Syracuse Law School. He ended up with a debt because I had the dubious distinction of being listed as the poorest man in Congress. I shouldn't say this, but I'm going to tell you anyway. I got a call when I'd be away campaigning for somebody, I'd call my wife in the morning before she took off to school, see how things were. And I called her one morning. I was up in the state of Vermont campaigning for Pat Leahy. And I said, "Hi, honey, how are you?" She said, spine. Well, you know that's a good start. And she said, "Did you read today's paper?" True story. "Did you read today's paper?" Meaning the local Wilmington papers, Wilmington, Delaware. I said, "No, honey, I didn't see it." She said, "Headline, front page, top of the fold, Biden, poorest man in Congress. Is that true?" Well, I didn't think you were supposed to make money when you were in Congress. But at any rate, I didn't feel poor. No, by the way, I got elected when I was 29. I had no income. I had little. I was just starting my law practice. But I had a good salary as a senator. I thought that was just fine. But at any rate, those who borrow the original balance of less than $12,000, like community college students, you're going to be done paying that in 10 years if you go into the position of making sure you're involved in public service. And these changes are going to save more than $1,000 a year on average. It's a game changer. Let me close with this message to young people about this nation. I've always believed your generation, the 18 to 30-year generation, represents the best educated, most talented, least prejudiced, most generous generation in American history. And I really mean that. It is. That's why I'm so optimistic about the future. And that today we face an inflection point. One of those moments that only come around every few generations, where there's so much change happening technologically, politically, environmentally, that the decades and the decisions we make now are going to affect the future for a decade or more to come. It's going to set the course. I know your generation may feel like it's an added burden on top of what you've already been through. I'm not saying you have to shoulder the burden alone. The task at hand, though, and the task ahead is the work for all of us. What I am saying is you represent the best of us, the very best of us. Your generation is not going to be ignored. You will not be shunned. You will not be silenced. Just look at what happens when you speak out. 2 years ago, perhaps many of you voted for your first election or volunteered in your first election. You understood the choice and the stakes. Because you expressed your right to vote and elected me president and Kamala vice president, the highest ranking woman ever to be elected in history. Since then, with your help and the help of the Democratic members of Congress here, delivered enormous progress for the nation. People are still hurting with inflation. But the most significant gun safety law in nearly 30 years. We're going to, and by the way, I told the Gov, I got assault weapons banned once in Congress. We're going to do it again. We passed the most significant infrastructure law in 70 years. The only thing bigger was Eisenhower's Highway Trust Program. The first black woman on the Supreme Court of the United States has been appointed, I promise. I've appointed more appellate federal judges who are women and African American than every other president in history combined. And the most significant commitment to climate change we've ever engaged in. And if anybody ever doubted climate change, come to Mexico the last 2 years, New Mexico the last 2 years. You see what's happening. So I'm keeping my promise that no one should be in jail merely for possessing marijuana, by the way, just for possession. Nobody should be in jail. Those records should be expunged. And let me close with this. I know it's been a rough few years for hardworking Americans. A lot of families, things are still really tough. But they're bright spots where America is reasserting itself. I look around at all of you, and I've never been, as I said, more optimistic. We've created 700,000 manufacturing jobs in America since we came to office. 700,000. We have invested in new technologies. We invented the computer chip. We're investing literally $200 billion, and it's going to grow in making sure we produce these chips. They're smaller than the tip of your finger, but they run everything from automobiles to your home appliances to your wine, across the board. So we're making real progress. And by the way, a lot of it's just going to kick in beginning in January because we passed this profound legislation on whether it's dealing with the environment or for example, it's estimated that what we did on the environment, we passed legislation providing $368 billion and help to deal with global warming. Well, guess what? It's estimated that that's going to save just in what's available to people for their homes to to deal with weatherizing their homes, solar panel, a whole range of things. It's estimated it's going to save the average family American at least $500 a year. And it's going to save the environment. Look, I guess the point I want to make, Jim, I'll stop. Our best days are really ahead of us. We just have to remember who in God's name we are. We're the United States of America. There's nothing beyond our capacity. And I mean it. We got to remember who we are. I spent more time with Xi Jinping of China than any world leader has. When I was vice president and when I was out of the office for 4 years when I was a professor and then now as president. 68 hours in terms of on the telephone or in person with him. And he asked me when we were on the Tibetan Plateau, I traveled like 17,000, 18,000 miles with him. He said to me, he said, can you define America for me? I said, yes, in one word. Please always remember, one word, possibilities. We're the only nation in the world who believes anything is possible, and it is. So God bless you all, and may God protect our troops. Thank you, thank you, thank you.